Coach and counselor explores how today's youth benefit from intentional, empowering adult leadership. Each episode blends perspectives from coaches, mentors, players, and mental health professionals, shaping the next generation on and off the field. From tough conversations to inspiring transformations, we dive into what it takes to support young people in today's world. All right, welcome to the podcast. We have Walker Martin, who on his Twitter page, on his X page, says, just a kid from Colorado. A second round pick from the Giants, by the Giants in 2023, is a 52nd pick overall. Massive amount of accolades in his senior year. 2023 USA Today National Baseball Player of the Year. 2023 All PBR Team, the 23 Max Prev Small Town All America Baseball National Player of the Year, 23 Perfect Game High School All American, ABCA First Team All American, the Gatorade Player of the Year, PBR Colorado Player of the Year, and was a 6-time state champion at Eaton High School as a football player and a baseball player, 3-sport athlete, played basketball there as well. Before I turn this over to you, Walker, I gotta also just highlight some of your stats your senior year. A 633 batting average, 75 RBI, 20 home runs, 33 walks, 50 hits, 11 stolen bases, and 64 runs scored. What an incredible year. No wonder why you had all those accolades. Walker Martin, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, Tony. Good to be on. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I guess many people know that you were injured pretty significantly your senior year, right?
Yeah, no, senior year was definitely a tough year for me, going into it, I decided not to play basketball my senior year and kind of take that time to focus on, getting ready for possibly the draft and just focus on baseball, getting in shape. But that kind of came to bite me in the butt a little bit and, ended up kind of working a little too much and ended up having a little harsh fracture in my back and had you know, some problems there, but was able to manage it. And I didn't even know I had it until, after the season, got the x-ray and, um, yeah, it was, I just kind of, it was a nagging pain once that day hit and just kind of dealt with it, tried to do as much as I could to help it. Um, and yeah, thankfully got through the season and, finished off a good career with the Eaton High School. So
Was I don't want to say you fell to the second round because the second round is amazing. 52nd pick overall, but were you slotted for the first round and then once people realized that you had a back injury, was that one of the reasons why you might have fall the second round?
Uh, people could say that, but honestly, I think it'll, I really don't know. Honestly, that's kind of a coin toss, going to the draft combine, talking with some teams, some teams seemed a little concerned about it, once we figured it out, but some teams didn't seem too concerned about it. Thankfully the Giants and my last meeting and had a great conversation with all the front office and the members there. But yeah, no, they didn't seem too worried about it. They believed in me 100% and was, I was pretty fortunate. I was pretty confident that I was going to go possibly their 16th overall. Obviously that didn't go through. They picked up one of my good buddies, Bryce. That ended up working out. But yeah, no, they came back through later in the second round, and they had that same energy they installed into me at the combine. Had the same belief, and it ended up working that way. But some teams definitely seemed a little bit more concerned than others, which possibly I think could have impacted the draft a little bit. But honestly, it all worked out how it needed to be, and I'm more than happy, and I'm very blessed to be in this organization. They've treated me with tons of, gratitude and, my development has just grown since I've gotten here.
Yeah, they definitely took care of you at the beginning. They basically just shut you down. So normally after the draft you go to the fall league and start practicing and playing games, and you were in a much different situation at that point. So when what your last at bat obviously was the championship game
Hmm.
for Eaton, and then when did you take your next at bat after that?
Yeah, no. Last at bat was championship game, and then get signed, get settled in Arizona at the complex with all the guys, and sent me straight to rehab, and all those guys were playing in rookie ball, playing in the ACL league, getting their at bats kind of within the next week or next week and a half. Um, and yeah, I didn't get my first at bat until that first spring. So I was behind, and it kind of it was tough for me. I was behind in the game, and had to I was just kind of thrown into the mix. And there's only so much you can do to prepare yourself for professional baseball with just flips and just um, you know, RMBP and the progression that they put you on. So it was definitely tough to catch up at first. So I don't it was yeah, it was close to 6 months, six some months. I don't even know. It was a long time since I got another at bat.
Wow, that's tough. So I'd like to get into that your first real year, and now you're in your just completed your second year in pro ball. So I do want to get into that, but let's kind of circle back and go all the way back to the youth days. I vividly remember coaching a long time ago, back when my son was playing, and 8 9 years, I think 9 years old, and we played pretty impressive Eaton team back in the day, and there were some really good players on there. um, what goes on in Eaton, Colorado? Like, what's in the water there, man? There's some serious talent that comes out of there, not just in the baseball world, but football, professional football players, and at the professional ranks, sort of all across. Like, why is Eaton such a special place?
I think generally just a bunch of kids that just love to play sports, and we hold each other to a higher standard, I believe. We've starting from, Mitch Ryan to Austin Eckler to Trent Sig in the baseball and football realm. All of us kids grew up wanting to be those players. And as we kept getting closer and closer to high school, we always had someone to watch in high school, someone to look up to. And that our program, growing up was really good at the time too. They were winning state championships, had Matt Burkhart, Lane Greiman, Brady Tedesco, tons of good athletes to watch, and so it's I think it started, right when I got uh, you know to Eaton in second grade. The program that in baseball, football, basketball, they just ran it differently, and they always competed to the best of their ability. They always showed 100% effort. And thankfully, my dad was the football coach at the time. And, me and a couple of my buddies would go and sit on the sidelines. And, the two young kids coming over from the middle school would come watch, and the elementary school would come watch and sit around watching practice. And it was intense, man. Our coaches, Coach Lemon, he was coaching us for all through my career, and even before we even got there for many years. And being able to watch him coach and have the expectations that um he held us to. He never changed, and so I think he preached to set an example for the younger generations, and that goes for the basketball coach and baseball coaches as well. So um yeah, I just think it's just a community that loves to play sports, and once we all get together, we always give each other 100% effort, and if anyone's slacking, we hold you to that. We'll hold you accountable. So it's just different. And I think just our group, my group, I'm biased, but um we start from second grade, we had that connection right away, and going through elementary school, middle school to high school, it just you know never missed.
Yeah, it definitely didn't miss much, right? Three state championships in baseball, three state championships in football. That class, that 2023 class, also won some other, I think it was wrestling championships as well during that time too, right?
Yeah, no, one of my best friends, Ryder True, he has nine, I believe, three in wrestling, and then three in baseball and three in football. So he's got, you know, all of his fingers pretty much covered. So
He's holding that over your head all the time, I'm
yeah,
sure.
100%, 100%, 100%.
Well, yeah, so then at some point, right, during your baseball career, you realize you're playing at a pretty good level there, and you start to expand outside of Eaton. Where did you go next? Like what club teams did you start to play for?
Yeah, no, I honestly I didn't, you know, growing up, I just wanted to be a really good Eaton Red when I was younger. Always wanted to be the next best star at Eaton High School. And once I started playing and got exposure to this thing called club ball, and so started getting some, parents started talking to my parents and say, "Oh, you should throw Walker into this, see if he likes it." So we took a chance. We started off, kind of small with pro swing. Kind of was the first, taste of travel ball. Started going to some places, traveling out of state, and I was like, "Mm, that's all I want to do is just play baseball." And being able to have an opportunity to travel to different states and do it was really neat to me. I always wanted to be a professional athlete and whatever it was, and that was kind of like the first taste of that for me. So, started off with pro swing, then um, after that went off to uh, a smaller team in Windsor called the Bombers. Played against, got some good bids into some good tournaments, had some fun there, got some exposure again, and then always ran into a Slammers team along the way. And, if we would always compete against them, and they were always had a good staff, good players on the team. And so once I kind of got to around like eighth grade, getting closer to freshman year, I was just like, yeah, talking to um, Billy, you, um, and everybody on that side, it seemed like this is where I'm gonna, make those big jumps in my growth. So joining Slammers around eighth grade, eighth grade year, I believe, was a no doubter in my mind. And I being able to play for 5 years with Slammers was a big part of my development. Getting that exposure, playing against the best teams, and competing at the high level, being able to, you know, be a Colorado team and compete against all these national teams, gave us that drive in a way. So, um, yeah, no, it was
I
huge.
I remember I was really tasked with putting together that team for that eighth grade year, and I was searching around for some talent. We got some Brighton Bighorn guys and some some guys from the different Tigers teams. And I remember talking to Todd Smith specifically on the phone, and he's like, "Hey, if you're interested in Tate, you got to be interested in this guy Walker. Like, you interested in me connecting with you?" And I said, "Absolutely. Let's talk." And so yeah, we were excited to have you. I didn't really know a lot about you at the time, but once we got you on the team, I knew right away that we had something special there. And it was funny because I mean, obviously you've been a shortstop your whole life, probably leading up to that, and except for that one year. And I would
Yep,
go to these games and I would see you in left field, I'd see you in center field, I'd see
yep.
you, a lot of times anywhere other than shortstop. And I'd talk to your dad in the stands, and I'm like, "Hey, are you okay with this? Because I think everyone knows that Walker should be a shortstop." And so he was your dad was great about it. You were great about it. Really humble. Like, "Hey, this is great. Walker's got to earn his stripes. He's got to prove to everyone he's there." But quite honestly, I made a call into Billy at the time. I was like, "Hey, you got to get out here, and you got to see this kid play, and please tell the coach that everyone should know that this guy should be at shortstop." So, Billy came out to a game, and I was like, yeah, it didn't take long for him to figure it out either. And I think he probably played a shortstop ever since then. So yeah, that was a great run, right? Some great teams, some great players, competed at a really high level. But I'm sure you had tons of other opportunities, right? Every national team, Slammers tries to stay true to keeping Colorado kids and Colorado kids only. I'm sure you had a ton of phone calls from a lot of national teams and probably offering you to play for free. Why didn't you ever, go and play with them?
Yeah, I mean, being fortunate enough to have an opportunity to play on a national team and do that is, it was cool. but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I have, I would say I'm a pretty loyal guy, and being from Colorado is also a big part is a big uh I it's like I have a chip on my shoulder from being from Colorado because not many hitters make it out from Colorado. So, having that kind of chip on my shoulder to prove people that you don't need to be on the national teams to go win tournaments. I always thought that we have a good group of dudes here that are, filled with, fire that are ready to go play. We have this chip on our shoulder to go prove everybody wrong. And that's what I wanted to, and that's the type of team I want to be on. So, all that was cool, getting an opportunity to do that, but it's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be with my buddies who I've grew up playing with, my pretty much my whole travel ball career. And, it was a special group and it is some of my best memories in baseball to this day. Um, and yeah, we almost got it done that last year in the WWBA, um, but yeah, no, being from Colorado is special to me. And, you know, I, it's just loyalty for me. There's no point in me joining another team just so I have to make new friendships when I already have them in Slammers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I'm sure your teammates appreciate that too. You still stay in touch with a lot of them?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I text them all the time, keep up with them. Um, try to I know everybody's busy with their times. We're all scattered across, the states here, but whenever I get a time, I try to call them, text them, see how everybody's doing. Um, Probably haven't been at my best doing it recently. Just been kind of busy with some fall league stuff going on, but yeah, no, I try to keep up with everybody, see how everybody's doing, and everybody's, we could see each other over years and we'd still be the same conversations right back to it. So, um, yeah, no, it's friendships that will last for a long lifetime.
Yeah. So, um, you committed to University of Arkansas before getting drafted. What was and you went on a lot of visits, if I remember correctly. Obviously, you had to juggle the COVID era just like everyone else. But what was the reasoning behind the commitment to Arkansas? And obviously it's early and it's probably a brutal question to ask you, but do you think about what if you would have went to Arkansas instead of going into the draft? You have those thoughts at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I had them during the time when I was hurt and everything. Like, you always question if you made the right decision, but in reality, I'm right where I needed to be. God put me here in the Giants organization for a reason. College would have been fun. I had developed a great relationship with Van Horn and Nate Thompson and all the coaches there. Got to know a lot of the commits there. Um, and I really believe that that was home for me if college, would have worked out that way. But yeah, I believe that I'm right where I need to be, and having that opportunity, given the circumstances, in the draft of what I needed to do to, not fulfill my commitment. I I believe the more I think about it, like I think it was the right decision, just with being injured and everything, having to recover. But um, yeah, I think about it. I thought about it more right as the draft happened because it was tough, man. As the draft was going along, it felt like I was going to school and then got an opportunity later in the rounds, um, to go there. But yeah, no, Arkansas was, I loved everything about it. Obviously got opportunities to go to their schools, take some visits, and I just everything led to there. They came with a lot of prayer. He had being huge in my faith. That was a big part of my recruitment. Is kind of wherever God put my mind on, and he made it obvious that Arkansas was home for me. So, but but yeah, obviously it's still a piece of me. I still have a lot of love and respect for those guys and coaches. They put a lot of time and effort recruiting me, and that will always be an awesome memory is developing that and being signing my letter to play baseball there was, it was pretty special. So, but
Yeah.
but yeah,
So then let's kind of go back now. That's kind of where we started. Was you're injured. You have to sit out all fall season. You go 6 months really without even taking a swing. You're behind the eight ball right away. I mean, Major League Baseball is hard enough as it is, but to take 6 months off and to kind of jump back on the bike is going to be brutal for you. So you
yeah,
you have struggles, and like, I think anytime anyone has any struggles, you have some you start having some doubt. So let's talk about the struggles that you went through, physically and mentally, and how you started to overcome that. Because you're still here today, right? You're still playing. You're
yep,
getting better every day.
yep.
But take us through. It was probably a dark time that first year.
Yeah, first year was, was tough. Obviously they kept me as long as possible, right as I got signed in Arizona to rehab, go through it. Once I kind of got sent back home for the off season, I just I didn't have a plan, had kind of didn't really have an idea of what I could do. That was kind of the toughest part is knowing what progression was going to look like, and it was just kind of, blank in that way. Kind of was just left, just kind of go, and obviously that was tough for me. Um, so kind of just maneuvering around the back, seeing what this day felt better than the other, like trying to do as much, recovery, core, all this stuff to get back as possible, feeling 100%. And, yeah, I fell behind the eight ball, it was tough. It was, because I was underprepared, didn't take enough training, wasn't able to train as much as I would like to get ready for that first spring. And, kind of getting back to Arizona, have to go back, check up with docs, see everything, and kind of go through a progression again whenever, even though I thought I was ready, going back with a progression they made for me, it was kind of tough, it just added more to like being unready. And so, yeah, it started off at a tough point, and I didn't feel ready. I was nervous about live at bats, games, um, and those it was true. I wasn't ready, wasn't ready to compete, wasn't ready to be thrown into professional baseball. Kind of unprepared. So, get through majority of the spring. Right when spring hits, tore my hammy. Ended up
Ugh.
ended up hitting a double. Hit around first right as I hit the bag, tore my hammy. Um, yeah, and it just kind of added to, the problems. So go through all extended, go through all AZL, wasn't great. It was tough, having to fight with, recovery, you know, progressions, live at bats, and also wanting to be successful, and getting out of rookie ball. You'd have your spurts here and there thinking you're ready to go, and then the next day it'd be tough. You go back to it and you're like, ah man, I'm not ready. It was a really big struggle for me, and then got an opportunity to go out of Arizona playing low A for the last two months, and kind of the same thing, struggles on struggles, and fighting with yourself in the mind game, thinking, overthinking things, trying to work everything, to working your body to fatigue, trying to correct everything just like that, and that was kind of, I wasn't used to that, wasn't used to failure like that. And so, and yeah, that first year was, I went through some tough times and probably my darkest times in my baseball career. So,
Is there, like looking back on it, is there anything that you think you could have done differently or done better or done more of or done less of in that regard of like to better prepare yourself? I mean, I think this is really common, right? It's really
yep.
common for someone to go from college to pro or high school to pro, and it's their first time that they've ever really failed, and it's a shock. It's
Hmm.
and you start thinking like, am I good enough? Am I good? And like, and just all these doubts start going through your head. So, is Did you see a sports psychologist at all during that time? Should you have? Could you have? Like, what are the things that you could have done to, get yourself out of that hole a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I got to the point where I was calling, people, agents for help, calling like, you gotta help me out with someone to help me out with this mind game, help me with the swing. I'd get down at the facility, and I started seeing another hitting guy and like kind of a he was kind of he did a little bit of both mental and uh hitting. He played for a good couple of years in the big leagues, and I would get done with the facility and go right back to hitting again, and it was just kind of a lot at the time thinking about it, thinking it was going to help, and it just kind of he was a great guy, don't get me wrong, like his work and his things were great. It just kind of got to the point where it was just kind of a lot, and it was just adding to the problems. Um, but yeah, no, it was just because yeah, I don't even know. It was just dark times. I was calling everybody, trying to just see what I can do. And there's things you wish you could take back during those times, but you going into it as a young kid, I mean, you don't know what you're doing. Um, and you just kind of just taking everything on the chin is pretty much what I was kind of going through. Knowing, but looking back at it, I wish I could have done a lot of things different. Um, the way I looked at things, the way um, talked to myself in the mind game, there was a lot of things that were negative like, wasn't a lot of positive things going on in my mind, as a young kid to telling yourself some of the things that were going on in my head. It's, you wouldn't want that for anybody. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a dark year for me for sure.
But you eventually, snap out of it. The second half of last year, you put up some impressive numbers. I've been following you. I think Baseball Reference is on speed dial for me. I'm
Hmm.
checking out what you're doing and Jaworski's doing and all the other guys on the,
Yep.
in the college ranks, Tinney and everyone else. Like, um, is there something that you can specifically point to that allowed you to just, get on that run and have a, great second half?
Yeah. No, I think a lot of it was, kind of just putting it in God's hands for, taking all of my problems I had here and just submitting to him and kind of just giving him everything and just never looking back. I think after I figured out how to give him my problems and not worry about it was the biggest thing for me. That's like going back to what we were talking about. I wish I could have understood his plan better. Like the more I look about it, like baseball is always you're gonna have, say you have a bad day, you're gonna have tomorrow. Like I would bring yesterday's problems into the next day, and the way I went about it this year was totally different. Um, Bad game the night before, I'd go in like the next day, oh, I'm 4 for 4. Like this guy can't beat me. Like just the way you talk about yourself, and a lot of that came through with my faith. And, it was tough. It was a tough relationship kind of get going with that. But once we figured, I sat down and took the time to, understand him, and he responded. And it's just, you know, you kind of laugh at it, thinking about it now, like I was a fool. Like I was so, you know, like he had it all under control and all in his plan. Like thinking about it, like I needed to go through those tough times just to get in a better relationship with him. That's the way I look about it now, even though it was the worst year of my life. Like, you know, it was a year I needed just to learn his understanding. You know, it wasn't my time, it's his time and all that. So once I understood, like, it's all in his hands and I'm playing for him, you know, that's when the stress of baseball became second. Everything after that just tore up, and my relationships in the clubhouse with my family, you know, I was having fun intervening with the fans, you know, just having fun. It was baseball again. Like I was a little kid all the way through high school. It was like
That's
that
great.
all. So once I figured out that in that second half in this last season, starting from spring all the way through the season, and including now in the fall league, like once I figured that out, like it it makes baseball fun again. But obviously, you're gonna have your tough times here and there, but not nearly as tough as that first year was for me.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing you smile a little bit more and having some fun. Well, we're gonna take a quick break for our commercial sponsor here, Walker. But I do want to come back. You brought up your family. I do want to talk about them and how they're doing, and their role that they have and have had on your life, and kind of get into some other quicker questions and talk about some things that could help kids in sports today, like both in the Colorado level and then throughout. So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
As we're talking about the challenges coaches face with young athletes, it reminds me of something that affects every youth sports organization: the administrative nightmare that can pull coaches away from actually coaching. I recently spoke with Jennifer from the Riverside Youth Soccer League, and she told me something that really stuck with me. She said, "We were spending more time managing registrations and chasing down forms than we were developing players." Sound familiar? That's exactly why organizations across the country are turning to OperationPlayerAssist.com. They specialize in handling all those behind the scenes headaches that eat up your time. Registration systems that actually work, automated communication tools that keep parents informed without blowing up your phone, and emergency response protocols that give you confidence when things go sideways. Jennifer's League saw immediate results. Registration time cut in half, parent complaints about communication dropped to almost zero, and here's the best part: coaches could focus on coaching instead of paperwork. If you are tired of administrative chaos stealing time from what really matters, developing young athletes, I encourage you to schedule a free 15-minute demo with the team at OperationPlayerAssist.com. See firsthand how they can streamline your operation. Visit OperationPlayerAssist.com and click Schedule Demo to book your 15-minute consultation, because when the administrative burden is lighter, everyone wins: coaches, parents, and most importantly, the kids. OperationPlayerAssist.com, supporting the game behind the game.
All right, welcome back, Walker. Appreciate it. We'll hopefully you got about 20 more minutes with us.
Hmm.
A few more questions for you. You brought up your family. There's some serious athletes in your family. So a quick question for you before we get into how your family's doing. Who's the best athlete in the family? Your sister's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I must say my sister for sure. She's the best. But yeah, no, she's a stud. She's killing it on the volleyball court. Her leadership and her athleticism. When you put two together, it's a pretty deadly weapon, and it's tons of fun to watch. She holds her team to a high standard, and you know, she she runs the court. So, and coming off like a tough first year, she's leading by example. Changing the scenery and kind of the mojo of the organization up there in South Dakota State. So she's killing it. But yeah, she's by far, I think, the best athlete in the family.
Who is the better athlete, mom or dad?
My mom. No shade on you,
So,
Dad, but my mom was. Even though my dad was a three-sport athlete and won plenty of state championships, he was a stud. But my mom, yeah, I got to give it to my mom. She played college basketball at Northern Colorado, and um, yeah, she played everything. So yeah, she could. She's awesome. She's the best.
great, great. And your family is obviously really important to you. Guys are close. Not just the four of you, but also your extended family too. I see it. You do post about your cousins and
Hmm.
some really good athletes there too.
Oh yeah, no, I'm pretty close with my family, even the extended side. We us cousins were really tight together. Growing up watching Mitchell and Connor, going to all their football, basketball games. They I mean, I had it. I was spoiled as a kid. I had all the examples in the world of how to play the game right. They led by example with Mitchell playing quarterback. Getting all these accolades out of high school, going to play at Sioux Falls in uh, South Dakota. Um, Same with Connor. Connor playing, being a stud basketball player, having many opportunities to play basketball, but chose to pursue football as well. Went on to play football at UNC, and yeah, my family's, full of good athletes, and they started their families too. So I'm pretty sure Baker and their kids are going to be studs too. So, but yeah, no, really tight together with them, and um, yeah, no, they're all great. Aunts, uncles, everybody's played sports. So,
Yep. Yep. That's great. Tell me what's one of the coolest memories you've had in sports? Doesn't have to be baseball. Doesn't have to be pro ball. If you go back and look at your last 10, 15 years of your life, what's one of the most memorable experiences you've ever had?
that's tough. I mean, there's been a lot of cool experiences in my career. Um, I mean, you could go state championship games, travel bowl games, uh, professional championship game. But I think for me, um, I'd say that tournament with all the guys that last year at Slammers, in the WWBA when we made it to all the way to Sweet 16. I'd just say that memory with all my friends, um, you know, was probably one of the coolest experiences. We did a lot of things no one thought we could do. I think if we had more pitching, we would have won the dang thing. But um, you know, playing all these national teams, beating them, you know, and just falling short just due to pitching. I think it was just. I think we would have won it, but that whole tournament, it was just. I'd say that was a highlight of my career. Just the connection we all had, and the bond. We did everything together. After the game, before the game, go get food. Um, we're always playing, mess around in each other's hotel rooms. Yeah, we were pretty tight knit group. So um, I'd say
Which
that's
was it, which is actually incredible, right? Because that team was really formed, last minute. It was a combination of it was the Slammers Dooman team, right? But it was
Mhm.
the Howard team and the Dooman team coming together at the last minute, and so some North guys who didn't know the South guys really coming together, and it was pretty miraculous how well you guys meshed. I mean, as parents, we talked about that all the time. Like we just couldn't believe of how special of a team that was, knowing that you guys literally just got together at the end of the fall season and made that happen. And
Yeah.
you went on incredible runs at WWBA. I know you were playing football at the time, but they went on the same run at in Jupiter, or
hmm
I think in the final eight or so. Um, Pretty incredible run, and especially being all Colorado kids playing against guys from 15, 16, 17 different states. It
Yeah.
made it that much more special.
Yeah. No, it was very special. Also, going back to high school too, throwing all I'd say, you know, those state championship runs, they were all different. We always had that one game where it was really close, always was, it got, really intense, it got to the point where I was like, oh man, we have a chance of losing here. Like, they always got to get, we always had something going on every year, one game. But I'd say just the biggest thing out of that was just kind of the connection with my high school friends too. We all had that will to, you know, find a way to win, find a way to win. And same with the Slammers guys. We always had that will to find a way to win. So I'd say those are my, most cherishable memories.
I'm gonna
But
put you on the spot though. Of those six championship rings, which one was the most special?
most special, including football.
Yeah,
Oh man. I'm
Ryder might come tackle you if you don't say,
yeah,
say
yeah,
football.
yeah. No, I'm definitely honest. I'm honestly leaning to football more just because there were some games that were just fun. Like that my junior year in the what was it? 21, I think. No, that was 22. I can't remember. But my junior year, um, that we had a semifinal game to go to the championship against UH, which was our rival. It was a shootout till the very end. And so winning like that and that was our last year at that our old high school. So being able to win one last game there and going off to win the championship that year, I think that year and my junior year was probably my favorite. Um, obviously senior year, that was cool too. That was, uh, last ride. Um, but I'm gonna say probably my junior year, football one.
Got
And
it.
that, yeah. But for
No,
baseball, I'm gonna choose for baseball too. My favorite baseball one was, I think that, I think my last year was my favorite year. Yeah, just I don't know. Something about it, just being done, just the end of a career in high school. It was,
makes that
it,
much more special.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
emotional. And just the ride. It was cool. So
Yeah. What's some of the best advice a coach has ever given you?
to this day, is still just I remember where I was told it was by Steve Howard on Slammers. Um, we were sitting in the van. I was going through a slump, and it stuck with me through the rest of my career, from that point on. But he just said, "Be yourself. Why you being someone who you aren't?" You know, these scouts are coming to watch you be Walker Martin. They're not coming to watch you be so and so, this guy. Like they're coming to watch you to be Walker Martin. And so once he told me that we were sitting in the van in Ohio, it was just us two. I was walking around outside and I saw him and he pulled me in. And I was told him, I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm struggling, man." And he's like, "You know how many scouts have called me talking all this stuff, like asking questions?" And to this day, he's like, "They're calling me about you." And he's like, "They're not calling me about someone else. They're not calling me about this. They're coming to watch you. Like, obviously, they're coming to watch everybody, but I'm getting calls, and they're like, and the main thing is just like, be yourself. Don't be anybody who you're not." And from that point on, go and take. I remember a big memory of my career. I took a little bit of that into area code games. Uh, Going into the junior summer, the area code games. You know, I had one game where I think I golden sombreroed. I had like five at bats, one single and gold sombrero with it. But I uh I was sitting at dinner with my parents. Obviously we're having a nice dinner in San Diego. We're talking up, just kind of thinking. My dad asked me, he's like, "What's wrong?" And so I was just thinking, I was like, I'm just not being myself. I'm trying to be everybody else. I'm not. My dad's like, "Exactly. Be like Stevens told you. Be yourself. Everything else will be fine." And that very next day, the rest couple of days, couple of games, it was, tore it up. So it was something I've always brought with me ever since that day that Cephas told me. Just be yourself. Don't be anybody who you aren't. And that's the truest thing I've ever heard to this day. So
Do you have that written anywhere? Do you have it in your locker room? Do you have it on your bat? You have it in your glove, your batting gloves, anything like
yeah,
that?
I usually with my gloves, I usually write, either about like a Bible verse on the thumb, and then somewhere else on like the side, I'll write, "Be you, be yourself," something like that. Have something like on my bat, or I take a sticky note and I tape it down to my locker every day. First thing I see on that thing, it says, "Be yourself." I Big thing for me. I write
Yeah.
a lot of things like that. Just a reminder that you are who you are, and you don't need to change.
Great. That's great advice. And it's great advice, I think, to have that reference point, a visual,
Hmm.
something to keep you in that right headspace. So um, that's great. And I'm glad you shared that with us.
For sure.
Um, what do you feel like is the biggest leadership mistake that coaches or parents make with with young adults, with kids? Like looking back on your career, whether it was when you were 10, 12, 15, or 20, what do you think? One of the mistakes that parents or coaches make when working with kids.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot going on with, the youth programs, and everyone's trying to do this and this for their kid and rush into things, kind of overwhelming them with all this stuff that's coming out, that's kind of like seeing it over Instagram and like Twitter and stuff. I'm like, that's kind of a lot. As a kid, I couldn't even imagine doing something like that. Thankfully my parents were both, the best parents I could have ever had in that realm. They never, they always said, if you start something, you finish it. That's like the main thing. They weren't really pushing me to do it, all this stuff. Like obviously I was very fortunate for them to start paying for some, hitting lessons here and there. But it was all because I wanted to. It's not because some of these kids, I feel like I feel like there's kids out here just doing all this extra stuff and like doing these programs, throwing weighted balls, all this stuff at like 13, 12 years old. I'm like, I mean, dude, he's a kid. He's gonna develop into a man later on. But yeah, I would say there's a lot going on with that. I personally was, I wasn't very big growing up. I was kind of like undersized, maybe a little bit, nothing crazy. Um, Compared to like Tate, Mason, all those guys when we were little, I wasn't anything like that, but I was kind of a late bloomer in that sense. Kind of started growing like sophomore, late sophomore year, maybe junior year. Finally started filling my shoes, and I'm still growing to this day. Grew another inch this past year, which is crazy. Um, but yeah,
How tall are you now?
I'm like 6'3" and some change, so close to 6'4".
Wow.
But yeah, no, it's it's unrealized. Some of the things I think that it just like parents are pushing on these kids to do just baseball through and like they're all year long. I think a big part of my success is playing multiple sports. It gave me perspective. You know, you take a break, you always come back to it. You always have that here. Like, but once this season comes around, you focus on this. Um, so being in multiple sports was a big part for me. And I think it grew me as a baseball player in general because I mean, in the mind and in the body, it always kept me in shape. Oh, and he taught me how to lead a team, taught me how to, you know, you know, all that stuff mainly down the road. But um for
Yeah,
a parent,
it's
it's a
definitely a question. It's a question that I don't need to ask you, right? Is about
yeah.
early specialization. You played three sports for 3 full years and two sports your final year. So
Hmm.
you definitely believe in that, right? I mean, do you feel like at at any point did you feel like you were losing out on anything by playing sports all those sports throughout those 4 years?
No, I really don't. Obviously the man, what's that tournament? The Jupiter, yeah,
Yeah.
that was always going on when I was playing football. Always when, which I'm very thankful for Coach Lemon. He gave me the opportunity. I told me and Tate, we'd always come back right week before summer's done. We'd start practicing. Once summer was done for me, it was straight football, and I was very fortunate because I know I've heard of other programs, benching and won't even accepting kids on the team because they're trying to do stuff like this. Mine were very open for me pursuing a dream in that sense. But yeah, no, a big goal for me is just dominating here in the fall and
You
you
there?
know coming
I
into the
lost your
next
audio.
spring, ready to roll and hopefully make some big jumps.
Yep,
And
I can hear
always
you now.
just getting better mentally
Yep.
just pushing myself to keep getting better, growth in the baseball mind, growing my faith, putting that first. And yeah, that's pretty much all my goals. But yeah, the mental game is a big part for me, and continuing to put that first um, is huge for me. So
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, we're bumping up against the clock here, and I want to respect your time. I do appreciate you doing this.
yeah, well, I appreciate everything you've done for me too. It's been a true blessing to get to know you guys, you and Ashton, and the rest of your family. So I wouldn't be here without you guys. So appreciate you, Tony.
I know you're busy, and I do want to respect that. I appreciate you sharing, not only all the success you've had throughout your careers, but also just shedding light on, that everything's not an Instagram reel, right? Like,
Hmm.
the game of baseball is really hard. Before we started this recording this podcast, we were talking about all the guys that are throwing, 95 to 105 right now. It's insane to watch the playoffs and the World Series right now and seeing so many
Hmm.
guys throwing over 100. I mean, the game is, from a hitter standpoint, it's the hardest it's ever been in the history of the game. And you're right smack in the middle of it. So I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Of course. Yeah. No problem.
Well, I'm a big fan. I'm always following you. I'm always watching, and if you ever need anything from me at any time, please don't hesitate. But again, I appreciate everything that you and your family have done for us, and I'll continue following you and wish you the best of
Yeah.
luck.
Well, I appreciate everything you've done for me too. It's been a true blessing to get to know you guys, you and Ashton and the rest of your family. So I wouldn't be here without you guys. So appreciate you, Tony.
All right, take care, Walker. Say hi to your
Yep.
family.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, sir.